What if one of the most revealing signs of Alex Eala's rise isn't a trophy, a ranking, or even one of her biggest wins? What if it's the way Coco Gauff talks about her? That might sound like a small detail, but stick with me, because when you line up Gauff's comments across different tournaments, different results, and completely different circumstances, a fascinating pattern starts to emerge. This isn't about claiming Gauff fears Eala, and it definitely isn't about pretending the two players are already equals. The actual results don't support that. Instead, this is about something more subtle. One of the biggest names in American tennis appears to recognize that Eala presents a combination of tennis ability and crowd energy that opponents have to prepare for. And when a top player keeps acknowledging the same qualities, whether she wins or loses, it's worth paying attention. The clearest example came in Dubai in February 2026. Gauff had just survived Elise Mertens after facing 3 match points, the kind of escape that normally makes the post-match interview entirely about the winner. But while Gauff was still processing her own dramatic victory, she looked toward the stands and acknowledged that many fans were probably waiting for Alex Eala. She even apologized for keeping them waiting. Think about that for a second. Gauff had just produced one of those victories where a player could easily spend the entire interview talking about her own resilience. Yet Eala and her supporters entered the conversation anyway. The easy explanation is that Gauff was simply being gracious, and there's plenty of reason to believe that was part of it. Gauff has developed a reputation for handling media responsibilities with maturity, showing respect to opponents, and understanding the atmosphere around major matches. But when you examine more than one comment, the story becomes more interesting. According to the source, Eala was 20 years old, from Quezon City in the Philippines, a left-hander who trained at the Rafael Nadal Academy, and had climbed to a career-high world number 20 after winning Washington in August 2026. The source also describes that Washington victory as the first WTA singles title won by a player from the Philippines. Her major breakthrough had come earlier in Miami in 2025, where she defeated Madison Keys and Iga Swiatek in consecutive matches on her way to the semifinals. Those results already gave opponents plenty of reasons to take her seriously. But the most interesting part of Gauff's comments is that they weren't dependent on Eala beating her. Their completed head-to-head meetings, as described in the source, were split. In Dubai, Gauff defeated Eala 6-0, 6-2. There's really no way to dress that score up. Gauff dominated. Then at Indian Wells, Eala was ahead 6-2, 2-0 when Gauff retired because of an arm problem. Officially, that gives Eala the victory, but context matters. One meeting was a comprehensive Gauff win, the other ended because Gauff couldn't continue. So this isn't evidence of some established rivalry between two evenly matched players. In fact, that's exactly what makes Gauff's language noteworthy. Before their Dubai quarterfinal, Gauff discussed the kind of atmosphere Eala's supporters could create. According to the source, she compared the experience of playing in front of strongly partisan crowds to previous matches involving Jasmine Paolini in Rome and Lois Boisson in Paris. That comparison says something important about Eala's emerging place on tour. Gauff wasn't necessarily saying Eala was playing at the same level as the biggest stars. She was recognizing something different. Eala had developed the kind of support that can materially change the feeling inside a stadium. That matters in tennis. Players compete alone once the point begins. There's no teammate to calm you down, no coach walking onto the court every few minutes, and no way to escape the emotional energy of thousands of people sitting only yards away. When almost everyone in the building wants the other player to win, you feel it. The applause becomes louder. Your mistakes get bigger reactions. Your opponent's winners feel amplified. Momentum becomes harder to control. Gauff knows that experience well, which is why her willingness to place Eala's fan support in that broader category is significant. The Filipino fanbase following Eala has become part of the experience of playing her. Then came the actual Dubai match, and Gauff crushed her. If all the pre-match praise had simply been promotional politeness, you might expect the conversation around Eala to disappear afterward. The scoreboard had seemingly answered every question, but the broader respect didn't vanish. And then Indian Wells complicated the picture even further. Before Gauff retired, the numbers described in the source were interesting. Eala was getting 68% of her first serves into play and had converted 5 of 6 breakpoint opportunities. Gauff's first serve percentage was 44%, and she had accumulated 26 unforced errors compared with Eala's 12. Obviously, Gauff's arm issue has to be included in any responsible interpretation of those statistics. An injury affecting the arm can influence serving, timing, confidence, and the entire structure of a player's game. It would be misleading to pretend otherwise, but Eala still had to execute. She still had to return the ball, recognize opportunities, convert breakpoints, and keep her own errors under control. Afterward, Gauff could easily have made her physical condition the entire story. Instead, according to the source, she emphasized that Eala had been playing great tennis and said she didn't want to take anything away from Eala's performance. She also expressed confidence that Eala could have a strong tournament. That's where the pattern becomes interesting. Gauff acknowledged Eala's presence before playing her. She continued to recognize what Eala brought after beating her decisively. And when their next encounter ended because Gauff was injured, she still made a point of crediting Eala's tennis. 3 different contexts, yet the respect remained remarkably consistent. That doesn't prove Gauff considers Eala a future champion. It doesn't prove she sees her as an equal. And it certainly doesn't mean Gauff is afraid of her. Those would be dramatic conclusions unsupported by the evidence. A more reasonable interpretation is that Gauff understands Eala has become a player who requires real preparation, and preparation isn't only about forehands and backhands. Eala is left-handed, which naturally creates different patterns against right-handed opponents. Her serve comes from different angles. Her return positioning creates different pressure. Her ball patterns require adjustments. Add a highly energized Filipino crowd, and the challenge becomes tactical and emotional at the same time. That's the distinction that matters. There's a huge difference between saying, this player is already top 5 level, and saying, this is a player I have to solve. The first claim would be premature. The second is exactly how professional tennis works. Players and coaching teams build files on opponents. They study serving tendencies, preferred return positions, patterns under pressure, movement, defensive habits, and where someone tends to go on the biggest points. Nobody at the elite level waits until an opponent reaches the top 5 before taking those details seriously. If somebody is dangerous enough to appear repeatedly in the later rounds of major tournaments, the homework begins early. Eala's own results explain why that homework is becoming necessary. Miami established that she could defeat elite opposition. Washington added a tour-level title. Her ranking moved into the top 20. And perhaps just as importantly, the attention surrounding her grew alongside the tennis. She wasn't simply collecting points. She was bringing a new audience into the conversation. That's why Gauff describing Eala's fans as good for the sport matters. Professional tennis is always searching for players who can expand its reach. A player who inspires people in a country and region that haven't historically been at the center of WTA marketing offers something valuable beyond individual results. For Filipino fans, Eala isn't simply another player in the draw. She represents visibility. When she competes in Dubai, Indian Wells, Miami, Washington, Cincinnati, or New York, supporters have someone carrying their flag onto stages where Filipino tennis historically had very little representation. That emotional connection can transform an ordinary match into something that feels like a home event thousands of miles away. But there's another side to this story, and ignoring it would turn analysis into hype. Eala still has plenty to prove. The Dubai scoreline against Gauff was 6-0, 6-2. That happened. More recently, according to the source, Amanda Anisimova defeated Eala in Cincinnati 4-6, 6-4, 6-2. Eala took the opening set and created opportunities, but Anisimova ultimately took control. Those results are reminders that breaking into the top 20 and consistently beating the very best players are different challenges. The elite tier of women's tennis is brutally difficult. Players there punish small weaknesses. A few loose service games can decide an entire match. A brief drop in intensity can turn a lead into a loss. One spectacular tournament doesn't automatically make someone a permanent championship contender. Eala herself seems aware of the increased attention. The source quotes her saying, "I love having the target on my back." That's a powerful mindset, but the target becomes heavier as expectations rise. Opponents study more film. Crowds expect more victories. Every defeat generates questions that didn't exist when she was an underdog. Success changes the challenge. The next stage isn't simply proving she belongs. It's learning how to perform when everyone already knows she belongs. And that brings us back to Gauff. Maybe the most important thing about her comments isn't that she praised Eala. Athletes praise each other all the time. It's the consistency of the acknowledgement. Different tournaments, different scorelines, different circumstances. Yet Gauff repeatedly recognizes either Eala's level, the atmosphere surrounding her, or both. That suggests Eala has crossed an invisible line. She's no longer somebody established stars can treat as an interesting newcomer. She's somebody they prepare for. That may sound like a small distinction, but in professional sports, it's enormous. Recognition from opponents doesn't give you ranking points. It doesn't win matches. It doesn't put trophies in the cabinet. But it tells you that the locker room has noticed. Alex Eala still has a long road ahead if she wants to reach the very top of women's tennis. The evidence doesn't tell us where she will eventually finish. It does tell us something about where she stands right now. She has enough results to command attention, enough tactical qualities to demand preparation, and enough fan support to change the atmosphere of a tournament. Coco Gauff didn't create the Alex Eala story. Eala created that herself through her performances. But Gauff's words offer an unusually interesting glimpse into how one elite player sees what's happening. And maybe that's the real milestone here. Not that a top 5-star complimented Alex Eala, but that one of the sport's biggest names appears to have stopped talking about her like a curiosity and started talking about her like part of the competitive landscape. The next time they meet, none of those words will matter once the first ball is struck. The scoreboard will decide everything again. But until then, the message from the tour seems increasingly clear. Alex Eala has their attention. Now the question is what she does with it.